Good evening, everyone. I'm so glad you guys are here. I'm so pumped about what God has in store for us. And we are going to be in Luke chapter 15 for most of today. We're continuing a series that we're calling The Why Behind the What. So what do we, as we look at the return, as we look at what God has called us to as a ministry and what God has called us to as a church, why do we do the things that we do? And we're pretty much going to be in one chapter today and one chapter alone. And at the beginning of the chapter, in Luke chapter 15, Jesus is at it again. And right there at the beginning of Luke chapter 15, it says this: "Now the tax collectors and sinners were all gathering around to hear Jesus." So at the very beginning, we see Jesus is at it again. He's surrounded with people that other people look at, tax collectors, people that people looked at as sellouts, people that they looked at as just less than us, people that sold out our faith for other people. And he's not just hanging out with them, he's teaching them and he's inviting them to have dinner with him. So he's around these sinners and tax collectors, people that other spiritual leaders were like, why is he doing that? And sure enough, they ask. But the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, they muttered, "This man welcomes sinners and eats with them." And you can hear that judgment. These people, he hangs out with those type of people. Why is he hanging out with them? Why is he inviting them in? I thought he was supposed to be a spiritual leader. I thought he was supposed to be hanging out with people who loved God, who are running after God. Why is he hanging out with them? And then we see in verse 3, then Jesus told them this parable. And I love what he does. He tells 3 parables in this chapter. And I love it because when you think about the audience there, the audience, when you think about it, they are obviously like Pharisees, people, teachers of the law. There are people that the Pharisees are judging, sinners. And then there are also like his disciples. And I just love this idea that when he's telling, just from the different perspectives of everyone in the audience, what they must have heard when they heard this. And these 3 stories, I think, are so incredibly powerful of how he tells them why he's doing what he's doing. Then Jesus told this parable. Suppose one of you lost 100 sheep, or has 100 sheep and loses one of them. Doesn't he leave the 99 in the open country and go after the lost sheep until he finds it? And then when he finds it, he joyfully puts it on his shoulders and goes home, and then he calls all of his friends and neighbors together and says, "Rejoice with me, I have found my lost sheep." And so he tells them the story of someone, hey, imagine you have 100 sheep and you lose one of them. You're going to leave the other 99 to find the one because that is valuable to you. And then when you find it, you throw a party. And then he goes further. He says, I tell you in the same way that there will be more rejoicing in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous people who do not need to repent. And then he goes further. He says, or suppose a woman has 10 silver coins. Those were worth about a day's wage. So imagine like $100. So this lady has $1,000 in her home, and she loses one of them. And she says, what would you do? Doesn't she light a lamp, sweep the house, search carefully until she finds it? If you have $1,000 and you lose a $100 bill, that's going to bother you. You're going to run after it. You're going to say, where did it go? Man, and then when she finds it, what does she do? She calls her friends and neighbors together and says, rejoice with me. I have found my lost coin. In the same way, I tell you, there is rejoicing in the presence of angels over one sinner who repents. Have you ever lost something valuable? This weekend, I was teaching the Journey class on Saturday night, and one of your return students was in that class. Letha was there. Letha, when she was taking the class, and afterwards, she realized, and maybe you've had this moment, and I don't mean to put her on the spot, because I think all of us have done this. She has this moment on Saturday night where she goes, I don't know where my keys are. And how far away do you live from home, Letha? 35 minutes away. So she doesn't, and she's like, I live 35 minutes away. I don't know where my keys are. I must have left them in the auditorium. So what does she do? She goes in the auditorium, which at that point was already black. She brings a friend with her. They have their flashlights out. They look for it. She comes and finds me. And luckily, someone had turned them in, and they were right where they were supposed to be in the lost and found. But we rejoiced. When she walked up today, she walked up literally holding the keys like in victory, like there they are. I found it. It's awesome. I don't know if you've ever done that. Like for me in my house, I lose this thing quite a bit, and this is valuable to me. Now I have a baby who you maybe have heard running around in the back. She after each song that Tyler sang, she would start going more. She wanted more music. She just loves to worship God already. She's 18 months old, 17 months old, almost 18 months. But she is at the age where she can walk around now. In fact, she walks around like the baby who busted in on the BBC interview, if you remember that baby. So if anyone remembers that video, that's how she walks around, and now she knows this thing is valuable to me. And she walks around and she grabs it and she pretends like she's on the phone. She goes, hello, hello. And she has a new saying, by the way, because we always say it to her. She goes, hey, baby. And she does it because that's what we say to her all the time. Hey, baby. She doesn't really get it, so she's like at Kroger, and random people are like, that little baby just called me, hey, baby. But it's adorable. She's great. But what she does is she finds this thing, and she's also like super loves to explore. And so she'll just like put it in random like dressers or random like the laundry hamper. So what I do around my house quite a bit is I just go, hey Siri, where are you? And then she replies back and she says, I'm wherever you say I am or whatever. She like, and that's how I'm like a crazy person walking around my house. Hey Siri, where are you? Hey Siri, where are you? And so because my phone is valuable to me. Let me tell you a story when I was in college about losing something that was far more valuable. So my sister, in college, she decided, her and her roommates, I went to school, I went to Texas A&M, and actually when I was there, I have an older brother and 2 younger sisters, and all 4 of us were there at the same time, which is awesome. And so the oldest of the 2 sisters, who's still younger than me, when she was there with her roommates, they decided, we need a dog in this apartment. And maybe you felt that same way. So they went out and bought a Cocker Spaniel puppy. At that time, Friends was really big. Maybe you watched that show. And then while they were watching Friends, there was an episode, and maybe if you're not into it, that's fine. There was an episode where they have a baby, and they named the baby. They thought it was going to be a boy, and it was a girl, but they still named the baby Chandler. And so she had a girl dog that she named Chandler, and she lived at their house, a little Cocker Spaniel that they just thought would be a cute little adorable, kind of codependent puppy, because that's kind of how Cocker Spaniels are. But what she didn't realize was she adopted an incredibly independent, like totally dominating, like dog who just like, and within a week, I mean, this dog had eaten all of their shoes, had just destroyed this apartment. They realized like, we're going to lose our security deposit if we don't get rid of this dog. And so she said, she came to me, who was living there, and I had 3 roommates as well. We had a backyard. She said, can you keep the dog until the summer? And as a college guy, I mean, you're just like, of course, like a puppy is like a magnet in all sorts of ways. So we're like, and this dog, I mean, she was awesome. Chandler was an amazing dog, especially for us. She's just like, I don't know a better way to put it, but for like college dudes, she was perfect. She wasn't needy. She was like, she let you pet her, but it was kind of on her terms. She was like real laid back. She loved to wrestle. She was like not afraid of much, so you could take her to the park and she would just kind of chill with you. She was an awesome dog. In fact, all my roommates would always just steal her because they knew that it would get attention. And the next thing you know, like people would know my dog more than they would know me. They'd be like, is that Chandler? And I'm like, how do you know my dog and not me? This is crazy. But I would get notes. Back in the day, we didn't have cell phones. And so we had like marker boards, which were like super valuable in college because that's how you communicated with your friends. That's where you put like every phone number you ever got, you put them up there because you're like, I don't want to lose this. And we didn't have phones to put them in. So that marker board was like incredibly valuable. So I'd show up from school and there would be on the marker board, it would be like, hey, I took Chandler to the park. Constantly, this was happening. So after a few months of having Chandler, there was one night where my roommate woke me up in like the middle of the night, and it was like incredibly confusing. Now, Chandler slept, like I said, she was independent. She wasn't one of those needy dogs who like roots in on you. She would sleep at the end of my bed. So in my bed, but at my feet. And I woke up in the middle of the night. My roommate is shaking me and going, Jason, wake up, wake up, wake up. And I'm like, what is happening? What is happening? And it's super loud. It's super loud, and I'm like, what's going on? And he goes, and it's like the worst way to wake up. wakes up and he goes, hey, you need to wake up. It's hailing outside, and Chandler just ran away. And I go, that's impossible. Chandler sleeps at the end of my bed. And he goes, no. And he's trying to explain it. He's frantic. He's going, here's what happened. There's a thunderstorm that came in. It's hailing. I was going to wake you up to tell you to move your truck into the garage. And as soon as I opened the door, Chandler must have got afraid. She ran out of your room. I had the front door open, not thinking. She ran out of the front door. She started getting hit by hail. I ran after her, and she took off, and I don't know where she is. And about 10 seconds into that story, I'm already up. And I'm sprinting out of my house just wearing like a T-shirt or a shorts, and that's it. So I run out wearing just shorts, and I'm run out into the street, and I'm like, Chandler. And I'm getting pelted by hail. I mean, it was so painful. And I'm like, but it didn't even faze me because I lost my Chandler. And I'm just screaming, Chandler. 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, whatever it was. Chandler, getting pelted. My roommate runs out. He's yelling. I'm yelling, which direction did she go? She went that direction. I'm screaming. He's screaming. We see nothing, hear nothing. I run back inside, grab my keys, jump in my pickup truck, and I'm out. And I'm driving down the street, yelling as loud as I can. I'm sure waking up my neighbors, but I don't even care. I'm just screaming. Chandler. At this point, she's maybe 3 months old. And I'm just screaming, praying that I see any movement. And I see nothing. And it's like 2 blocks of me just driving down in the direction he told me she went, Chandler, nothing. So by this time, I'm like turning around to wake up my other 2 roommates to tell them that we need to find this dog. It's still hailing. I turn around, and at this point, all 3 of my roommates are outside screaming for Chandler. And the fact that they're looking helps me know they haven't found her. So one of my other friends, he jumps in his car. I'm in my car. We're driving up our whole neighborhood in this little college town in Texas screaming. We're waking up neighbors, and we don't even care. I'm gone for it felt like 5-10 minutes. It probably wasn't that long, but it felt like so long because I'm just screaming, and I'm like, maybe someone found her. I'm going to go back. I come back. At this point, neighbors were outside helping us look. The hail had stopped. They're outside in the middle of the rain screaming my dog's name. We're all like trying to find Chandler. And once again, the fact that they're looking helps me know they haven't found her. After 2 or 3 tries of this, finally I go out, and I'm like, I don't even know where to go. And this might sound so dumb to you if you're like not a pet person, but I'm just like praying, like, God, like, help me find this dog. 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 I'm looking. I finally am like, at this point, I'm like 6 blocks away from my home. And I'm just praying and begging, driving this pickup with no shirt on, just doing anything I can to find this dog, no shoes. And suddenly I see 2 eyes underneath a car that's parked in the street. And I'm just thinking to myself, please don't be a stupid cat. Please don't be a stupid cat. Please don't be a stupid cat. I jump out of my truck. I run underneath, and there she is. And she's just shaking. And I'm going, Chandler, come here. Chandler, come on, baby. It's okay. Chandler, come here. And she wouldn't move. But she was alive. And so I'm just on my stomach underneath this car, everything I can to reach her. I reach her, I pull her out, and I drive back home. And by this time, there's probably 12 people looking for Chandler. And I'm just going down the street going, I got her. I found her. I found her. And we partied whenever I brought her in because it was like, Chandler is here. And I didn't know what to do. I should have probably taken her to the vet looking back at it. For some reason, I'm like, she's freezing because she was shaking. So I literally put her in the sink, which probably isn't the wisest thing, but I put hot water on her. I don't know if that was the right thing to do. I was just trying to wake her up because at this point, she still wasn't moving. And so I'm shaking. And finally, my roommate comes in with a treat, and she just pops up like she always does. And I'm like, there she is. She's back. And why do I tell you that story? Because we run after the things that are valuable to us. And the things that are extremely valuable to us, we run after with reckless abandon. Doesn't matter. We're just saying we want to find this thing, this person that is valuable to us, this dog that is valuable to me. And what Jesus is doing while he's talking to this group of people who are judging him for who he's hanging out with, he tells two stories. He says, hey, if you lose a sheep, you go find him. If you lose 1/10 of what you have, you search everywhere. And every time you find it, you party. And then just to make sure that everyone in that room would know who he's talking about, that the people who were judging, the people who were being judged, and his disciples, that they would all totally get it. He goes into another story, and this time he doesn't just talk about stuff. He talks about a dad who loses his own son. And he makes it clear that the son who was lost on his own accord. He didn't just wander off. He chose to leave his father. In a way, and he says there's two sons. The older one, the younger one of the two, said, I want my inheritance now. He would have gotten 1/3 of the inheritance. It says that this was a wealthy man. And he says, I want 1/3 of your stuff now. In other words, I kind of just wish you were dead so I could have everything that's mine. Give me mine. I'm going to go party. I'm going to live my life. And he takes 1/3, and the dad says, here you go. I'm not going to hold that from you. And he gives him 1/3 of everything he owns. The older brother stays back and works. The younger brother goes out and parties. According to the story, we know that he was drinking. We know that he was affected. We know that he was, that he struggled. He was making incredibly poor choices in relationships. He was running after women that wanted him for his money and not for who he is. He was choosing horrible decisions. And to the point that tends to happen with everyone where he finally hits rock bottom, he's spent everything that he offended his dad to have. And he's to a point where he has nothing. And in fact, he's working with pigs, which at that point, with the people that would have heard it, would have been like the worst of the worst. And when he's sitting there, and he's surrounded by these pigs, and he's thinking of everything that he's lost, he starts yearning to go back to his dad. The very dad that not long before, he said, I wish you were dead. Just give me everything. Just give me my stuff now. And he knows that his relationship with his dad is probably fractured. So what he says is he doesn't even want to go back and say he's son. He just goes, I would be better being a servant under my dad than where I'm at now. And so what I'm going to do is leave this place where I'm at. I'm going to go back and I'm just going to beg my dad to let me be a servant. He says he has a speech planned. He has a whole speech that's planned. That he's going to go up to his dad and say, hey, I know that I've offended you. And so he's practicing his speech. He's going back home. He's going beat up. He's going embarrassed. He's going back knowing he's offended his dad. And yet, the story that Jesus says is that while he was still a long way off, his father ran to him. And when he finally got to him, and there's so much to that of him basically embarrassing himself, running to his son. He embarrasses himself and he runs to him and he goes, this is my boy who I thought was lost, and he's found. And he's so excited to see his son. Everyone else would have thought he would have went to his son and go, I'm disowning you because you disowned me. Get out of here. And that's not what he does. He meets him with grace. And not only that, but it says that he puts his robe on. He reestablishes him, not only in as a servant, which is what the son wanted. He reestablishes his place as a son, as a member of his own family. And then he looks at all of his servants, he looks at all of his family and says, get our best cow. We're going to throw a massive party because my son was lost and now he's found. And we're throwing a party for that. I love that view, and it's very clear to everyone hearing that the dad represents God who's running after his lost sons and daughters. He's running after them. And I can't imagine what it would be like to be in that situation. And I imagine myself like I have been as one of the sinners, as one of the people that are being judged, as one of the people that have grown up thinking that you weren't spiritual enough to hang out in certain circles, and to have this spiritual leader who claimed to be the Son of God sitting around and going, these people, I'm here for them because they're valuable to me. And if one of them turns away from the way that they're living and turns towards God, there is a party in heaven, and I'm just here to run after that and to start that party. I can't imagine how that would be to hear that and go, I am valuable. Despite every decision that I've made along the way to run away from God, God is running after me, and he still sees me valuable. And he still sees me as part of his family if he would have us back. And yet there's still the older brother who sees this whole thing happening, and he gets frustrated. And he says, man, I've been with you I've been serving you. This guy's been out partying. I've been serving you and serving you and serving you. You haven't thrown me any parties. What's going on with that? And he's angry. He's talking to his servants in the field by himself, and it says that the father, once again in his mercy, because I can't imagine how painful that would be to hear someone say, I've hung out with you, but I'd rather be partying. And he got the better end of it. And he runs to his older son. And he says, hey, I've been with you the whole time. Proximity to the Father is better than anything that this world has to offer, and you're missing that. But for now, my son who I thought was lost is back, so we're going to throw a party. And we're going to dance, and we're going to celebrate. And what he's doing to this religious group of people, this quote-unquote religious group of people, is he says this: if you think you're like serving God, but you're not looking after the people that are far from him, if you would rather judge them than run after them in love, you've kind of missed my heart. And it's this terrifying reminder that serving God doesn't replace knowing God. These people were serving God, but they didn't know his heart, because his heart was to run after those who were lost. And the reality is, for all of us at some point in our life, we've all been far from God. We've all made choices that have offended him. And yet he runs after us. And so maybe you're here tonight, and maybe honestly, maybe you've been running from God and you know it, and you've been just looking at God and going, I'm going the other direction. I don't want to live a life that honors you. And maybe this is the night, if you're really honest, because I think if you're honest and you look at your life and go, how's that working for you? Like how's that? Is that satisfying? Is what the world has to offer actually satisfying you? Like, how are you doing with the guilt in your life? Are you running away from it? Are you medicating from it? Or do you realize that you have a Father who is better? And maybe this is the night where you realize that for the first time. And what Jesus says is when that happens, there's a party. And maybe you're at a different point where you've been far from God, but man, you came back and you've been following after him. But you've been following after him, but what you've done, even on accident, is you've surrounded yourself with people who also are running after God, but in the process of that, you've turned your back on the very people that God's running after. Because we have a saying here that is incredibly biblical. And at the return, we say that we are party starters. Why do we say that? Is because we realize that God has invited us to run after those who were lost. How do we do that? We do that by praying for our neighbors, by praying for our coworkers, by praying for our friends, by praying for our family that don't know God, and waiting for those moments where they open a window into their heart that you can share your story with them about who God is. Can I just ask us a question that I feel like God's been impressing on my heart this weekend? I got a lot going on in my life right now. My prayer life is active. I am praying a lot. And the reason why I'm praying a lot, if I'm really honest, there's just a lot of uncertainty in my life right now. I have a baby that's due in December. There's just a lot of questions at the same time of where are we going to be? There's just a lot going on in my life right now. And a lot of my prayers, if I'm honest, have been, God, all right, where are you at? Where are you leading us? And here's was a question I felt like God was impressing on me this week was this. Jason, if I answered every single one of your prayers today, if I answered every prayer that you ask me today, who would get baptized this weekend? And a question I have for you in a loving way is if God answered every single one of your prayers today, who would be running back to him this weekend? Which party would be started this weekend? And so what my encouragement is for you is that you would look in your circle of influence in your family, in your classroom, in your sorority, in your student organization, with your coworkers, that you would look at your sphere of influence and go, God, I know that you love them even more than I do, and I just want to be a light however I can be. And you would pray for your circle of influence, and you'd pray for them by name, that they would see how valuable they are to our God, and that you would have a role in starting a party and bringing them back. And let me make no mistake about it. The party is not about us. The party is about the God who runs after us. And I also love imagining his disciples hearing this, because at a later point, as he predicts, Jesus dies on a cross, and he raises again, and he looks at his disciples and he goes, hey, here's what I'm asking you guys to do now. I'm asking you to go to all of the nations, and I want you to remember that story of God running after what he's lost. And I'm asking you to go into the whole world, and everywhere you go. And the actual verb means as you go, as you're going everywhere, wherever you're going, make disciples of all nations. Show people how valuable I think they are by loving them and pursuing them the way that you've seen me pursue the sinners of this world. And I want you to go to all the nations. And as you go, I want you to be a party starter. Because God celebrates when those who are far from him come back to him. And what I love about this community, what I love about the return, is they realize, our college-age young adults here, they realize that God has created them with a purpose. They realize that they are at a very specific time in their life where it's easy for them to go abroad, for them to go to the nations and to start parties, not only in their families, not only in where they work, not only at school, but throughout all of the nations. We showed Dee's story last time we were here. Dee talked about, she told an amazing story of realizing that God has gifted her with a purpose. Every Sunday you see her loving on 2-year-olds in Discover Town, and she kind of threw this little nugget in there. I don't know if you remember from last week. She kind of threw this nugget. Oh, well, I was doing homework at Coffee Crossing in Jeffersonville, and Callie, who is one of our college-age young adults who works at that Coffee Crossing, she invited me to church. And I just loved it because she just kind of threw it in there, and I'm like, there it is. There's Callie being a party starter. To realize she's not just there just to serve coffee, but she's there to wait for opportunities, to pray for her customers, and wait for opportunities when they open the window to go, hey, life's more than just doing homework. You should come join this group of people who are running after who God is. And I love that story, and the reason why I love it and the reason why I think this is so powerful for us is there are people in your world, there are people in your sphere of influence that God wants you to be a party starter with. Pray for them. Run after them. And like we talked about last week, look for those opportunities to go to places and to go to literal countries that are far from here, to be a party starter wherever we go. For the last 7 years we've been as a ministry, the return has gone to Romania. And we've partnered with an amazing ministry there, someone who's from here but feels called to run after people who have grown up thinking that they were far from God. He goes, no. She's saying, no, you're not far from God. And she's living her life running after a group of people who are often like marginalized, often overthought. And she goes, no, you have no idea how much God loves you. And as a ministry, we get to partner with them. And it's so exciting. We were praying, like every year we pray, all right, God, are you calling us back there? Are you calling us back there? And so this is the first time we're like saying this. In spring of 2020, we're going back. And maybe God's calling you to be a part of that. To say, hey, I'm not just